Spurs news tonight. Dejounte Murray traded away to Atlanta.
For 3 future first-round picks.
It's definitely the most young, exciting backcourt in the East.
Am I wrong in thinking like the Hawks, that's the best backcourt in the NBA, right?
Atlanta Hawks at their peak.
That's crazy.
What does that look like?
The talent we have and just everything around, we could put it together. Top 3 team in the East. I really believe that.
Boston Celtics
We can get all the confidence.
finally able to turn out the lights on Atlanta.
Win a championship, you know what I'm saying? Not just be in the picture, just be in the running. Like, I want to come into the season like people look at that they can win, or they got a chance.
Atlanta's now dropped 5 consecutive games.
Essentially, anyone other than Trae Young and now Jalen Johnson's coming on as kind of a foundational piece for them. Everybody else, that includes Murray, should be available. Fair to say, after a year and a half, that transaction is not one that you would want to sort of do again if you were the Hawks.
Quick sidebar, because I just want just to remind niggas what they gave up for Dejounte Murray. The Spurs ended up receiving Danilo Gallinari, a 2023 first rounder that was Charlotte from New York was protected, a 2025 first round pick swaps in 2026, and another first rounder in 2027. Nigga, they received 3 first rounders. No way. One of which is probably so protected they might not have translated last year, but 3 first rounders and a pick swap for Dejounte Murray, and here we are a year and a half later, and the shit is not working out. Atlanta is like one of the most confused teams I think I've ever witnessed in my entire life, because understandably so, they were in the conference finals like not too long ago, but that might have been one of the worst things that happened to them, because what it has done is convinced them that they were closer than what they actually were, and then they start making trades all willy-nilly. Bro, if you go back to where this team was when they got Trae on the roster, Trae, John Collins, Taurean Prince. Shout out to Prince, man. Shout out to Taurean Prince, man. Finding a way on the roster still, man. Kevin Huerter, Dwayne Dedmon, Kent Bazemore, Bembry. Then the Trae and Luka trade, they got draft picks, brought in DeAndre Hunter, I'm tripping, and Cam. And then the very next season, they brought in Clint Capella and Bogdanovic. And I think this is the year that they went to the conference finals. Yeah, this is the year they went to the conference finals. Then that's when they lost Kevin Huerter and then brought in Dejounte Murray, and it's just been a shit show ever since, because even with Dejounte Murray, who was supposed to be the backcourt mate for Trae and address defensive concerns, they are still at the bottom defensively. They've also in the same process got rid of 3 coaches in Trae Young's tenure: Lloyd Pierce, Nick McMillan, and now Quinn Snyder. So three head coaches, 2 general managers, a bunch of roster changes, and we're still at a point where the Hawks are still fairly irrelevant. And I think this is actually the worst. Yeah, this is the worst season they've had since Trae Young has been on the roster, since Trae Young was a rookie, which is actually crazy. So they're going in the opposite direction, lost draft picks in the same process. It's kind of crazy to me that throughout all this entire conversation about moving off of Dejounte Murray, how no one is really talking and contextualizing what the Hawks have done within like a 3 to 4 year period. And it hasn't addressed anything, as, again, this team is still egregiously bad defensively. And then, even when you look at like the contract situations, Clint Capella has only 1 more year left on his deal. They signed everybody, but Hunter is making $20+ million now. So that's going to be interesting. What they get for Dejounte Murray is kind of, it's up in the air, but he got a contract extension and they're trying to trade him before his extension kicks in, because next year they already have $163 million committed to the roster. There's not really that much wiggle room for what they can or cannot do. They still got to sign Sadiq Bey to whatever they're going to give him. And then Jalen Johnson contract extension is up as well in the upcoming years. So they have a lot of things to do, but it's all not translating into winning basketball, because they're a losing organization right now and heading in the opposite direction. And when you look at Trae Young, only 3 years left on his deal after this season. There's already conversations about how he might be trying to finagle his way to San Antonio. The Hawks are just like a mess, just the definition of a mess right now. And it's so interesting that no one's really talking about it, even though everybody's talking about trading Dejounte Murray, but nobody's not talking about how a team essentially, bro, they traded a player, lost draft picks in the process, and a year and a half later they're trying to trade him to another team and try to get something in return. And we all know they're not going to receive the same thing in value. They're just not. They're going to get a worse return for a player that they gave up way too many assets for in the process. That's what happens when you trade for Luka, nigga. When you trade Luka off your roster and you try to build around Trae, bro, none of that shit is about to work, bro. None of that shit about to work. Tough.
No way we're doing this right now.
What? Is that my fault? Is that not the truth?
What is Luka doing differently?
Huh?
Being better.
He's a better basketball player.
I understand he's better, but I'm saying in total, what are the Hawks doing differently as far as an in-team result if they constructed themselves the same way? Are they a title contender?
That you can move more confidently with Luka, because there's a lot of things that you can still kind of balance out. Like, years like this would never happen if you have Luka on the roster. There's no way Luka would ever.
Years like what? Missing the playoffs?
No, leading a team to the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference while you're losing draft capital in the same process, because then you basically open it up for the Spurs to get quality draft picks. Luka might miss the playoffs. FYI, I don't think that he would have missed the playoffs. I don't think he'd be missing the playoffs right now. I think Luka would be fine in the Eastern Conference. When you have like a situation where like Pascal Siakam was available, and you have a situation where Gobert was available not too long ago either, I think that Luka would have made a lot of those complementary pieces look better. It would have justified them to keep more shooters around them. But more importantly, I think whenever you decided to make a trade, even if it was for Dejounte Murray, it still would not look so bad that you would be potentially giving the Spurs a quality draft pick in the upcoming years. Like, I think that's the difference. Bro, they gave the Spurs a 2025 pick, and if they look this bad this year with Dejounte Murray on their team, and they're talking about we're trying to bring in a third team into the mix because they know for a fact D'Angelo Russell is not going to be a good enough return for them to do anything. Bro, like, what are they doing right now?
What's their record right now?
The Hawks' record is 18-24.
Okay, so if they trade, if it's Luka on the team, and maybe even instead of the Eastern Conference Finals, that year they make the finals. They're still not winning the title. But let's go down this hypothetical.
I agree, they still not winning the title.
Right. So they still trade for DeJounte, trying to get better, because that was the thought process with Trae making the Eastern Conference Finals. So they still make this trade. Right now.
Do you think, well, let me ask you this. I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you think Luka would have made it to the finals?
I mean, who are they playing in the Eastern Conference Finals?
They played the Bucks, but remember, Giannis got hurt.
Yeah, if Giannis gets hurt, potentially. We're not going to act like, I'm not going to sit here and act like playoff Luka is not him. Okay. He's him. But I'm saying, like, they're still not winning the chip, though.
Trae was also hurt. I understand that. But Trae hasn't been playing good enough to kind of supersede a lot of things that happen regardless. So I just want to make that also clear as well.
What was their record in the stretch of games where this year, because I know Trae Young started, but there's also been a stretch of games this year Trae's was like balling out of his mind. What was their record in those stretch of games?
Look at this. This is what they've been doing since December. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 losses, my nigga. And since December, I'm pretty sure Trae has been playing much better. Trae, within that stretch, is averaging 27 points, 11 assists, 44% from the field, 37% from behind the arc, and 85% from the free throw line. I don't want to blame Trae because he got put in a situation where he's going to be the face of a franchise and they're trying to build around him. And the truth of the matter is that obviously he's not that good defensively, and he hasn't been so good offensively that will make up for that. So they've been trying to put pieces around him that make enough sense. At the end of the day, though, I still don't think the point I'm making, though, is that you're trying to build a team around Trae when you had Luka, and when you're trying to do that, you're always going to be struggling to try to figure out your identity without just accepting the fact that Trae Young just isn't good enough. Trae Young is not one of the top 7, 10, and some people's eyes may not even be a top 15 player in the NBA. So when you're trying to build around that type of talent, the truth of the matter is that you're going to need another top 15 player on your roster. That's just the reality. And so they're going to sit around and bounce around and trade all these players left and right, trade draft capital in the same process as well, move off of coaches, bring in new executives and GMs, and it's just not going to work because Trae Young isn't a good enough player to win a championship roster round. That's just the reality of what it is. And when you had a player like Luka on the roster, you can make these same moves and get better results because he's a better player. So Zay keeps asking, what should the Hawks do? I'm not saying they got to do it now. I'm not saying they got to do it right now. What I'm saying is trading Trae Young is like the inevitable at this point, because I don't really think there's any other type of option to do, because if he's only on the team for like 3 more seasons, what can the Hawks do? Like, who are the Hawks going to receive in this Dejounte Murray trade that's going to make sense? That's actually going to elevate them enough to say in the next year or two they're going to be able to compete in the Eastern Conference that's featuring the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Boston Celtics. What player that is even available right now would that make sense? And you tried to pull the trigger and go get a complimentary star, and the player that you got in return with Dejounte Murray, and even with Murray on the roster, you somehow have gotten worse. Your defense has gotten worse, and before his new contract kicks in, you're trying to trade him away because you know for a fact you messed up. Even the players that are going to be potentially disgruntled, they're still not good fits. People think that D. Mitch will be disgruntled. He doesn't fit on the team. If you think that Embiid is going to leave Philly, the Hawks certainly don't have enough pieces to go after him anyway. Zach LaVine doesn't fit on the team anyway, and even if you want LaVine on your roster, there's no no way you're going to convince yourself spending $40+ million on Zach LaVine even makes sense. The reality is that even if you get these players, that's still not enough to win. The Hawks need a top 10 player. That's what they need.